Thank you, Richard. And for this second half of this edition, the readers on this edition will be
Peter,
June,
and myself, Jeff. And Peter's going to kick off with the first item of news.
10 days after passing his driving test, a Potters Bar schoolboy was involved in a crash which killed one of his friends. But a senior police officer told Dr. David Paul, the Hornsey coroner, that no prosecution had been considered against Graham Watts of Darks Lane. The accident happened in the Ridgeway in Enfield on the 6th of May, and Andrew Justin Trousdale, aged 17, of Billy Lowe's Lane, Potters Bar, died soon after from head injuries and a ruptured spleen. The youth had been wearing a seatbelt and was a front seat passenger in the car with Mr. Watts and 2 others, all school friends from Owen's School, Potters Bar, when the car went out of control and hit a tree.
After handing out a large number of sleeping tablets to a Ponders End girl, the chemist rang the doctor who had signed the prescription because he was suspicious that it may have been altered. The doctor confirmed that some sort of fraud had taken place and the police were called in. At Tottenham Court, Gillian Doyle, aged 29, unemployed, of Curlew House, Ponders End, appeared with her boyfriend George Glover, unemployed, of the same address. Doyle admitted obtaining tablets by deception from Cross and Herbert Chemists, High Street, Ponders End, on June the 10th, and Glover admitted undertaking in the disposal of the same tablets at his home address on the same date. At an earlier hearing, Police Sergeant Anthony Groom told the court that Doyle had obtained a legitimate prescription from her doctor, who had been prescribing the drug for some years. She altered the figure to give the impression that larger quantities were required and cashed the docket at the chemist's. As soon as the chemist discovered the prescription had been altered, he called the police, who went round to Doyle's flat. Glover was in at home alone, and while the police conducted a search, he tried to hide the tablets in the waste disposal unit. The magistrate placed Doyle on probation for 2 years and ordered Glover to do 120 hours community service.
Changes in hospital care for the elderly, mentally ill and mentally handicapped were discussed by Enfield Council's Social Services Committee last week. The committee were presented with a report on consultative papers issued by the North East Thames Regional Health Authority. The committee have until November the 5th to comment on the suggestions. Basically, the report suggests a strategy for the next 10 years under the assumption that there will be no overall growth and revenue funds will be met from current resources. Enfield received a pat on the back for its care of the mentally handicapped. The Regional Health Authority said that Enfield was the only district in the region who provided an adequate service for the mentally handicapped. This statement is based on the facts that there are 180 beds in Chase Village unit, where in fact only 54 are in use. To finance the setting up of more local services for the mentally ill, the authority suggests the closure of Free and Barnet Hospital. A number of Enfield patients are in long-stay wards at Frian. The closure of Claybury Hospital, Woodford Bridge, was also recommended. Claybury admits patients from the Edmonton area. The authority do not suggest where patients will be transferred to from the 2 hospitals if they close. At the moment, the present level of facilities for the elderly mentally ill is well below standard, according to the report. There should be 98 beds and 98 day places in the district, but even with the opening of a unit in Highlands Hospital, Winchmore Hill, there will be 28 beds and 15 day places, the report says. The proposals advocate the closure and redesignation of 2 acute wards in each district general hospital to geriatrics. The Social Services Committee Chairman, Councillor Mrs Anne Lindsay, asked, "Where on earth are we going to find 2 acute wards to close?" The committee suggested that Cheshunt Cottage Hospital and Enfield War Memorial Hospital, presently under the threat of closure, could be used as homes. The Social Services Committee decided to ask for a meeting with the Health Authority officers as soon as possible before submitting their comments.
The controversial plan for a complete facelift on the North Circular Road at Edmonton was the subject of a heated public meeting on Friday the 10th of September. Raynham School in Upper Edmonton was packed with 240 worried councillors and residents, many of whom will lose their homes if the plans go ahead. Most of their objections sprang from the possibility of buildings having to be demolished, the lack of amenities, and the increase in noise, pollution and vibration. The meeting was called by Mr Ted Graham, MP for Southgate, and chaired by Councillor Mrs Rita Smythe, Chairman of Edmonton Labour Party. Mr Graham Reynolds of the Greater London Road and Traffic Division of the Department of Transport pointed out that the plans were only proposals and nothing was definite. The plans are for two schemes which will run alongside each other on the North Circular from Stirling Way in Edmonton to Walthamstow Avenue. The main scheme involves a dual two-lane underpass to segregate traffic from 4th Street and Victoria Road, Edmonton, and other local traffic, with existing traffic movements being maintained at 4th Street and a new controlled junction at Victoria Road. The other scheme from Dysonis Road and to Hall Lane will be chosen from two possible options. The first would be an improvement along the line of the existing road with two flyovers at Montague Road and Hall Lane. The second would mean the road being diverted on a viaduct through the industrial areas with the existing North Circular remaining as a service road. Mr Charles Jackerman of the Weir Hall and District Ratepayers Association said his main concern was for the people trying to get across the proposed footbridge to the North Middlesex Hospital. I certainly would not attempt to go up and over that, and I would rather risk my life by crossing the main road. There are thousands of other people with heart conditions or in wheelchairs, who have to visit the hospital, and it would be impossible for them to get there, he said. Mr Reynolds admitted that the department were not happy with the footbridge, but any other plans would mean taking away part of the forecourt of the hospital, which was out of the question. At the end of the meeting, Mr Graham said, "This is just the beginning of your making sure that what your community wants is to be listened to carefully." He urged people to write to councillors and their MPs with their objections.
An all-out campaign to try and stamp out car tax dodgers in Enfield could be launched early next year, for the Department of Transport have told the MP for Enfield North, Mr Tim Egger, that their officers will back Enfield Council if they decide to launch a campaign. Following local publicity, Mr Egger has received a large number of letters from constituents backing him in his campaign to ensure that action is taken against people who have untaxed cars. And recently he received a letter from Mrs Linda Chalker, the Parliamentary Under-Secretary of State at the DOT, stating, "You can be sure that if Enfield Council do show an interest, my officials would willingly cooperate." Mr Egger said this week, "I am delighted that the department is keen to cooperate with the council, and I will be urging them to make contact in order to arrange the campaign. The current level of evasion is simply not acceptable to the majority of law-abiding motorists. I know how strongly people feel about this from the terms of the letters I receive."
Two Enfield war veterans have paid tribute to the brilliant wartime life of Sir Douglas Bader, who died recently. Mr Arthur Higgerty of Carisbrook Close, Enfield, spent several weeks working with Sir Douglas during the war. He said of Sir Douglas, "I always remembered his attitude to the lower ranks. He seldom stood on ceremony. It was Bill, Frank or Arthur once he knew you." He added, "I count it a privilege to have known him." These sentiments were echoed by Mr Harvey Clark, chairman of the Royal Air Forces Association in Enfield. He worked with Sir Douglas on several occasions, usually in relation to his work for injured ex-servicemen. He said, "He was a great chap. The world is going to be a very much worse place without Sir Douglas. Sir Douglas was our inspiration during the war. He was a great leader, and he never stopped working, even after the war." A frisky young foal delighted visitors to the open weekend at Capel Manor Institute of Horticulture and Field Studies in Enfield. The manor in Bullsmore Lane was open to the public recently for the 7th in a series of 8 open weekends. The theme was chrysanthemums, crafts and produce. Over 1,000 people turned up and wandered around the grounds and stables which are leased to the Horses and Ponies Protection Association. One of the displays was the early show of the Enfield and District Chrysanthemum Society, but the show was overshadowed by the prospect that it may not run for much longer because of lack of money. In the past, the Society got the use of a marquee and tables free from Enfield Council and the Arts Council, but now they are being charged £50 for the marquee and £1 for each of the 46 tables. Mr Albert Wilkinson, Secretary of the Society, said he could not see the show going on in 1 or 2 years' time because they just could not afford to stage it. Well, as you've noticed, there's plenty of comings and goings on this edition. As you noticed, Dave will have just read. Peter's now gone, and we've got Alf now, and he's got a bit of news about Trent Park.
Hello there, nice to be on the 500th edition. On a previous edition, we talked about the Trail for the Blind in Trent Park, and now Ron Stevenson of Cockfosters has something more to tell us about it.
The Trail for Blind People, which is used quite a lot, obviously by Maureen and myself with our two dogs, Kim and Pippa. And it's used also by Jean McVeigh and her guide dog Farina, by Ron Langford from East Barnet with his dog Foster. Quite a few blind people come from, I suppose, about 10 miles radius, and we often meet them up in the park. And of course during the summer it's used by people from all over the country. They come down, they actually come down in coach loads, and they picnic in the park, and the blind people, of course, can use the trail. And as a result of this, they've had visits from people all over the world, and the trail has in fact now been copied in very many countries, including America and Canada, South America, Australia, South Africa, New Zealand, and Japan. And they're just a few of the countries that I know of. It's been written about in many, many journals, and it did in fact win first prize for the park manager, who at that time was George Matthews, a publication, I think it's produced by the GLC, covering all the parks in the London area. And because of the uniqueness of the blind trail, he in fact won a prize. So in answer to your question, it is still being used by locals, and a copy of the trail is being used by blind people all over the world now. Maureen and I did a programme on Radio 3 on the World Service, London Calling it was called, and we were interviewed by a chap named Gordon Snell, and that went out on the World Service, caused quite a lot of interest. And of course we did a broadcast, as you know, on the In Touch programme and guideline. Anyway, the park now is able to boast a cafe or a restaurant, I don't know what they call it, but it'll be finished in about a month's time, and you'll be able to get snacks there, hot and cold drinks, and not quite sure what the menu will be, but it'll be quite useful now. It means that you can spend the whole day in the park and you can have a nice meal there, and of course there is a picnic area there. So hope to see some of you on or around the trail, perhaps this year, if not say from next spring onwards. So all the best from Ron, Maureen, Kim and Pippa.
Thanks, Ron, for that contribution. Of course, Ron is one of our long-term listeners here. Just to carry us through the night, I'd like to read you one or two of my favourite quotations. The first one is attributed to Marilyn Monroe, before she became a great film star and earned money by posing in the nude, of course. After she had attained stardom, a reporter asked her, "Did you really have nothing on when you posed for those pictures?" "Oh, no," smiled Marilyn, "I had the radio on." Another one I like was a chap was warned by his doctor against too much high living. "Can you guarantee, doctor," he asked, "that if I give up drinking, smoking and sex, I shall live longer?" "No," replied the doctor, "it will seem longer, though." The other ones, be quiet. The other ones I like is the ones to W.C. Field, who was on his deathbed, and one of his friends went in to see him to give his last respects, and he found him reading the Bible. And he said to him, "Well, I very much like you reading the Bible. What are you actually looking for?" So W.C. Field said, "A loophole." And when he died, on his tombstone, he said, "I'd rather be here than in Philadelphia." But whether that's true or not, I don't know. The other one I liked was Woody Herman, who said, he said, "I don't fear dying at all." He said, but I hope I'm not there when it happens." Over to you.
Oh, dear. Now, a pensioner who is a regular patient at the threatened Wood Green and Southgate Hospital has criticised the proposal to close it. Miss E.R. Vandy, who is 92, described the hospital as absolutely necessary in a letter to the District Health Authority this week. Miss Vandy, who lives in Fox Lane, Palmer's Green, praised the work of the staff at the hospital. She said, "I have been and am now again an inmate, and I would most earnestly ask you to do all in your power to keep this grand institution open so that the wonderful work may go on."
An appeal for money to replace a roof at St John the Evangelist Church in Palmer's Green has met with an astonishing response from the church members. The plea went out in September's church magazine for £2,500 on a loan basis to repair the leaking roof and help maintain it during the harsh winter months. Treasurer Mr Colin Davis said they had received all the money but £50 within 4 days and were confident that cash would keep pouring in. He said the problem was caused by thieves constantly stealing valuable lead from the roof. The church asked for £10 or more from the members to be repaid within the year at 5% interest. "We have got to get this work done now before the winter, and we needed the money quickly. We hope next year, when we have more regular income from members who promise to give a certain amount each year, to repay," he said. The church, which is 75 years old and is in Green Lanes, will have the roof of the north and south aisles replaced.
Now, here's a short item about the new shopping precinct in Enfield. The new shopping precinct in the centre of Enfield is running into trouble even before it is open. The precinct, which stretches from Sydney Road to Sansfield Road and was hoped to be open by Christmas this year, has been undermined by moles. The moles, estimated to be in their thousands, have tunnelled under Cecil Road from the town park. Enfield's rodent expert, Reginald Stote, said the moles are believed to have been attracted by the large number of worms disturbed by the building works. Said Mr Stote, 43, "Unless the building contractors take precautions at once, serious damage will be caused." It has been found, in fact, that the moles react to a certain sonic resonance which, Mr Stote says, occurs exactly in the middle bars of the national anthem. The contractors have now issued orders to all their men to whistle, hum or even sing the national anthem at all times. At last, Mr Stote says, we can be sure of saving the shopping centre of Enfield.
4 old people's homes and a psychiatric hospital were visited by the Mayor of Enfield, Councillor Miss Phyllis Oborne, last week. The Mayor was on an informal tour of the Council's social services buildings on Wednesday of last week, and she spent a long time chatting to staff and residents. The first call was at Windmill Psychiatric Recuperative Hospital for Men and Women in Windmill Hill. From there she went to the Coppers Wood Lodge, Grove Road, the Grove in Chase Road, 44 the Ridgeway, and Ingleborough in Cavell Drive. The Acting Director of Social Services, Mr Thomas Holloway, accompanied the Mayor. She spoke to all the residents and they obviously enjoyed her being there, and the staff have been very appreciative of the visit, he said.
During a recent visit to the Haymarket Theatre to see Hobson's Choice, Valerie and I managed a few words with Trevor Peacock. Trevor has appeared in many West End plays and has appeared on television and has in fact written many musicals. He's also an ex-member of Enfield Grammar School and he remembers his sixth form days there.
One of them's the sort of second-in-command of Warner Brothers in LA. One of them runs the biggest advertising business in this country. One of them's a member on the Stock Exchange. One of them conducts the London Philharmonic Orchestra. What else is it? There's those two that run an insurance brokerage. There's me laughing around. Make people laugh. I can't remember. One's a psychiatrist. But they all, the whole form did extraordinarily well.
You sometimes get a crop like
we
that.
Still meet, you know, we still meet. We went back to the grammar school, actually, about 2 years ago. We had a mad weekend because it was all that whole thing of our side was based on being ridiculous. We thought we developed our ideas through some sort of taking everything to an exaggerated state, you know. And we used to do all sorts of wonderful things. When we went back 2 years ago, we booked a hotel in Enfield. We took our wives and spent 2 days there. It cost us £1,000 for the 2 days. And we did everything that was potty. I ran an exhibition of old Hoovers in the hotel. And we got all these terrible old Hoovers and put them all over the place. It said, you know, this is a Mark IV Benning, Wimpole, Hoover, you know, people, oh look, there's a mark for Benning, Wimpole. It was all rubbish. All the people in the hotel studied it all very carefully.
So Hoover's as an art form?
Yes, yes. I had a Hoover there saying, Hoover used by Nellie Wallace in 1922. They said, oh look at Nellie Wallace used it. It's all rubbish. And the whole thing was about rubbish. We used to believe that if you did things in an extreme way like that, it released you and you could sort of do anything. We had one, the vicar was one, we all went to church. We had a charabanc too, he used to take us all over Enfield. We went to church and the Reverend Henry Morgan, who wasn't actually one of us, he was in the year ahead of us. He was the vicar, he's the vicar of St Andrews now. And he preached a comical sermon. And we did things all over Enfield. We used to have a game called Throwing the Radish. You used to hang a sock up and you have to run up, like cricket, you know, if you ever watch sport. And say, you know, now let's be serious about what are these men doing, you know, in cricket, which I love, you know. And you see some fool rushing up with all sorts of wild movements of his arms, then fling a ball at 3 pieces of wood, and it's crazy. So we used to have this flinging the radish, and lots of people joined in. Old ladies said, you know, oh, can I have a go? And she used to run up and fling the radish, and then the vicar did it, and all the vicar's doing it. So it was all great, very funny.
Yes, did you go into acting straight after school?
I did a lot at school, I remember, you know. The masters were always saying, you must do some work, you know, and I didn't seem to see that was of any importance at all, which, looking back in hindsight, was much more important than I did plays. I got to school, certainly I got higher schools, but I didn't go on to... Anyway, I went straight into the army then, we all did. And all I did in the army was put on plays. And I went to Teachers Training College and just put on plays all the time. Then suddenly I had to teach. I did teach for a year in Edmonton, Cuckoo Hall. If anybody knows about Edmonton, I used to cycle there to Edmonton every day and teach. I did that for a year, and then suddenly I went into cabaret and started, you know. But I was a long while maturing.
How do you get on with the other members in this particular play?
Oh, very well. Very well indeed, really. You know, people think that actors are maybe a bit bitchy, but they're not really. They're wonderful people.
No, you don't find being a henpecked husband on the stage rubs off onto your relationship in real life?
I'm supposed to be having tea with her now between the shows, Penny Keith, but she's very good. She gives to me, you know, she's got a big dressing room upstairs, so we all go and have tea up there, and it's fun, you know, usually. And we're very friendly. Now I chase her about and tell her, let her know what's what. Except her husband sometimes appears, a rather large policeman.
Oh yes, I have seen him.
Watch it.
Yeah.
On the same subject, do you ever find that there is a cast that you can't get on with?
Not really, no. I mean, maybe one's lucky. I'm sure. I mean, in every business, there's people who don't get on sometimes. So of course you come across it. But somehow or other, you know, in the theatre especially, it doesn't matter so much in television because you prepare it and then you do it once, and then you're gone. You know, you say goodbye and you'll never see again. Yeah. But you've got to live together as a team for a long while in a play usually, and so you know you've got to get on fairly well. And if you serve the play well, and the play's the important thing and not what you're doing, which is the key to everything, you know. I mean, if you really do believe in the play, that's why if you're in a bad play, it's awful because you don't believe in it, and everything starts to fall aside, a part of the scenes. But if you believe in it and want to give it to the public, then you know that that's a common cause, and the common cause binds you together as in everything else. You know?
Yes. Have you done much television?
Yes, I've been doing more. I didn't used to like television very much, but I started off by writing television because I knew all about it. And I didn't like it, not having an audience. And in the end, when I got to the point where I could choose what I did, instead of just hoping somebody gave me something to do, I did go back to it, and I've done quite a lot now, and of all sorts. You see, it's very strange. I've just done 2 the Shakespeare's again. I've done 3 altogether, but I did 2 last winter and early spring, which they come out, I think, next winter, about January.
Yes, you don't find it as satisfying as live theatre?
It can be now and then. It's not really, no. Any actor will tell you in the end that, you know, acting is about being on the stage. It's much better than films where you can really have nothing to do with the thing. Sometimes that happens in the Borgias. I was in the Borgias. Famous, infamous series that was.
Except
that it's shown all around the world, you know. So one had to do it. It makes you a lot of money.
Yes. Did you understand the Pope's accent?
Well, I've never talked to Alfredo Celli, isn't it? Played the Pope. I've never in his scenes. But they was wonderful. I mean, they used to fly me out. I remember once they flew me to... I went out 6 times to Italy, and they flew me out one day. I learnt the scene on the aeroplane. It's not like the theatre, so you grow to become part of the play. And in that sort of television, which is like filming, all broken up, you say, well, which episode is it? And I'm going to today. And they say, it's episode 6. So you look up episode 6 while the air hostess brings you a drink. And you see your scene, you learn it. And it's a scene in which I rushed in from the hunt and sort of shouted at everybody and slammed the door and then had a scene and went out. And when I got there, and you go to the hotel and you get up in the morning, and they drive you out to this castle and put the costume on you and put the whiskers on you. And then I went in and they said, you ready, Trev? So I said, yes. I ran in and slammed the door and they said, right, that's it. I said, well, there's a whole scene. They said, no, we're doing the whole scene later, next month. So I said, why? He said, because so-and-so isn't here. He's on another location. So I said, you've flown me out here to slam the door? I said, yes. So I got back on the plane and came home again.
So you aim to stay in the theatre, really?
Well, no, I mean, I like to do television because it is, it does pays more money than the theatre does. The theatre pays quite good money now, but I've got a new family, you see. I started all over again. I got one of 3 and one of 4 months, so... And I'm moving out, so I have to do rather well where the pennies are concerned, and so one's got to do television, and I do.
And you're going into a musical soon, aren't you?
Well, I'm not going to play in it. I've written it with Alan Price, and I don't like playing in something I've written myself, because you can't, if you've written something, you should stand back and watch when you're preparing it. And if you're in it, you can't do that.
Yes,
Tom Corn's going to play Andy Cap.
Is it about the character in the Daily Mirror?
Yes, it is, yeah.
Yes, well, I think I'll have to stop now because, the tape's not very long.
Or do all the hospitals in Enfield hear this?
Not hospitals, but blind and partially sighted.
Oh, yes.
In Enfield. It's our 21st anniversary this year.
Good.
So we want to make a rather special edition.
Yes. Oh, well, very nice. Very nice to greet you all, folks.
Well, thank you for that, Valerie. We hope you have enjoyed this 500th edition, but before we go, it's over to Alf for a late news flash.
Yes, I've just been handed this late news flash. Billy Bunting, the infamous juvenile villain, was captured today after a 4-mile chase through Enfield town following a raid on a local sweet shop. But not before the police had stood up against the wall, closed their eyes and counted up to 100.
That's about all we have time for in this edition. We've had a little bit of a laugh doing it, and we hope that you've enjoyed it as well. So from this 500th edition, it's goodbye from myself, Jeff.
Me, Alf.
And myself, Dave.
And everybody else on the team.